Jodie Foster didn't ask for this. And neither did Ronald Reagan. But here we are. Привет, my друзья. I'm Comrade Vadim, and you're watching Ranking Every Assassin's Marksmanship. Today we'll be diving into the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan by John Hinckley Jr. We'll unpack the events that led up to this day, walk through every tense moment of this attempted assassination, carefully dissect the details of the shot before heading out to the range to see just how good of a marksman John Hinckley Jr. really was. In January of 1981, Ronald Reagan, movie star and governor of California, was inaugurated as the 40th president of the United States. He has inherited a turbulent political landscape. The country still reeling from the turbulence of the 1970s, which included things like economic stagnation, the Iran hostage crisis, and a shaken national confidence. But he has won in a landslide victory, with promises such as conservative reform, a stronger military, and restored American pride. But for John Hinckley Jr., none of this mattered. Isolated, mentally ill, and obsessed with actress Jodie Foster, Hinckley had no thoughts about politics. All he cared about was gaining the attention of Jodie. But this is what led him to politics, because he became convinced that assassinating the president would somehow win her affection. Inspired by the movie Taxi Driver, where a deranged man plots a political assassination, Hinckley was ready to turn fiction into reality. It's March 30th, 1981, only 69 days into Ronald Reagan's presidency. We're in Washington, D.C. at the Washington Hilton Hotel. President Reagan had just concluded a speech and was exiting through a side door, flanked by Secret Service agents, aides, and cabinet members. Outside, a small group of reporters and onlookers waited to see the president behind a roped line. Blending into that crowd was John Hinckley Jr., who had just traveled from Los Angeles to Washington, D.C. via a multi-day-long Greyhound bus route. He has a Rome RG-14 22 caliber revolver tucked away in his jacket pocket. The 22 is hardly a caliber of significance to assassinate the president with, but his is loaded with specialty-made Devastator bullets. A bullet filled with lead azide, a chemical that is made to explode once the bullet is already inside the victim. As Reagan stepped outside and began waving at the crowd, Hinckley suddenly dropped to one knee, pulled out his revolver, and began shooting at Reagan and his entourage. He fired 6 shots in 1.7 seconds. The first bullet struck White House Press Secretary James Brady in his head, just above his left eye, miraculously traveling below his brain, and despite exploding on impact, causing a serious but non-fatal wound. The second hit a D.C. police officer in his neck and spine, but once again causing a non-fatal wound. Before the third shot rang out, a Secret Service agent grabbed the president and began to dive towards the presidential limo. In mid-dive, the third shot flew right above them, almost exactly where Reagan's head was moments prior. The fourth shot hit a Secret Service agent who had spread himself out wide to protect the president as he was being shoved into the limousine. This shot struck the agent in the chest, hitting his lung, diaphragm, and liver, but once again causing a non-fatal wound. The fifth shot hit the thick, bulletproof glass of the limo, and finally the sixth bullet hit the armored side of the limo, and by just sheer dumb luck, found its way in the crack between the side of the limo and the door, and into President Reagan's side, through his armpit, through a lung, and stopping just under an inch away from his heart. Within seconds, Hinckley was tackled and disarmed. Reagan, initially unaware that he'd even been shot, was shoved into the limo by his Secret Service agents. Once inside, he complained about a cracked rib from being shoved so hard, but it wasn't until he collapsed in pain, spitting up blood, that anyone realized the president had been shot. Reagan was rushed to George Washington University Hospital and underwent emergency surgery. The initial prognosis looked grim, but he actually recovered quickly, returning to work in just a few weeks, earning praise for his resilience and sense of humor through it all, quipping with the doctors right before his surgery saying, "I hope you're all Republicans." Of course, John Hinckley Jr. was arrested on the spot. At trial, he was found not guilty through reason of insanity, which sparked outrage throughout the country and led to significant reforms in federal law relating to the insanity defense. He was confined to a psychiatric hospital for over 3 decades. The attempt had a profound impact. Reagan's popularity soared, security protocols surrounding presidential appearances were overhauled, and Hinckley's obsession with Jodie Foster was one of the strangest, most disturbing motives in American political violence. It also left a very large impact on the then only 18-year-old Jodie Foster. And in the end, she worked very hard to make sure that Hinckley did not get the attention that he wanted from her. She was forced to testify at his case, but famously didn't look at him or acknowledge him, which resulted in him getting very angry and being escorted out of his own trial. Alright, now let's talk about the gun and the shot. Hinckley chose to use a Rome RG-14 revolver, which I happen to have right here, which I picked up just for this video. The RG-14 is a pretty standard revolver. It was produced by Rome Gesellschaft in Germany, and it started production in around the 1950s, and it was continued throughout 1986. It is a double-action revolver that can hold 6 rounds of .22 long rifle, and weirdly enough, most of the frame is actually made out of zinc, making this a Saturday Night Special. As mentioned earlier, Hinckley didn't just use any .22 long rifle. He used the once unregulated Devastator bullet. These Devastator bullets are like a hollow point, where in the middle it has a very special chemical, lead azide. That lead azide is very shock sensitive, meaning that when that bullet was fired and began crumpling into the target, it would take the shock as the bullet deformed and explode on impact. It is definitely not something that I want to be on the wrong side of. Alright, so now for the shot. As we heard, Reagan was leaving the Washington Hilton Hotel from that VIP exit and going towards the presidential limousine. As he was walking from that door to the limo, John Hinckley Jr., who was in a crowd of reporters, dropped to one knee and fired off 6 shots in 1.7 seconds. And of course, as we heard, Hinckley hit 4 people, including the president, but killed none. But in one quick note before we go to the recreation is that while he didn't actually kill anyone that day, he is officially responsible for the death of James Brady, the White House press secretary, who had that bullet lodged in his head for the rest of his life. And when he died over 3 decades later, he was officially responsible for his death. Alright, so we have the gun, we don't have Devastator bullets, but we do have .22 long rifles, and we understand the course of fire. Let's go out to the range and see just how good, or bad, of a marksman John Hinckley Jr. really was. The Vadim. Alright, we are now out at the range to recreate this attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan by John Hinckley Jr. So as we just heard, as Reagan was leaving the Washington Hilton Hotel, heading towards the presidential limousine, John Hinckley Jr. hit him within a crowd of reporters, took a knee, and fired off 6 shots in under 2 seconds, hitting 4 people, missing 2, but we are going to find out just how difficult of a shot that is for ourselves, and then we're going to give him a ranking. So let's go warm up first, and then get to the recreation. But before we go warm up, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Comrade Vadim. He has graciously sent us this Rome RG-14 chambered in .22 long rifle, just like the one John Hinckley Jr. used when he attempted to kill Reagan. Alright, so we have 6 loaded up in the Rome. We're going to take some shots, get warmed up, that way we are fully prepared to do 6 and under 2, just like Hinckley. Alright, so for today, this is Ronald Reagan, and we are John Hinckley Jr. We're going to be positioned about 15 feet away from him, which is about right here. When I'm ready, I'll take my knee, and I'll fire off 6 shots towards the president. Alright, let's go ahead and give this a try on a static target that would represent Reagan. We can't fully represent what the panic and chaos would be as he gets shoved into the limo, but this is the best we have. Let's see how John can do. I get quite a few light strikes, so I'll just keep pulling the trigger until nothing goes bang anymore. Alright, so on attempt 1, we could ignore these 4 here from the short filming, but we did get 1 and 2 right on the head, actually. I shot a little bit slower than John would have, but that's what I can do and kind of feel okay. So let's go give it try number 2 and see if we can improve or maybe not do as well. All right, attempt number 2. The president's down! All right, so we got a few more hits this time. We did get one right in the shoulder. Of course, that wouldn't be anything on a real person there. Then we also got another one right there in his other chest, and then 3 in the neck. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Am I counting that right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shots. We'll remove 1, but 5 of the 6 shots, we hit the target this time. All right, let's make it scientific. This is attempt 3 of 3. You know, Jodie Foster didn't ask for this, and neither did Ronald Reagan. But here we are. All right, now on our last attempt here, let's see what we got. We have 1 more in the face, 1 in the chin, 1 in the neck right there, and that looks to be it for that one. So we did, I think it was 2 of 6, 5 of 6, and then 2 of 6 on a static target, of course. Ronald Reagan would have been moving for John Hinckley Jr. So because of what we've seen here today, taking into account that, yeah, once again, we have a static target, and that's not what John had. But regardless of that, from what we've seen today, I'm going to, thankfully, put John Hinckley Jr.'s marksmanship in the F category. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this episode of Ranking Every Assassin's Marksmanship, make sure to check out the playlist on my channel for all the other episodes, both the shorts and the long-form breakdowns. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and X, where I'll be posting some more behind-the-scenes content and other gun content. And make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment down below. Do you think that John Hinckley Jr. was one of the worst assassins of all time? Or do you think he did exactly what he wanted, since Jodie Foster had to give him some sort of attention? Well, anyway, till next time, do svidaniya.